like to welcome you. We would like to welcome you.
Good evening from Kenya, Africa. I'm Mweno Shabuya, the Executive Director of the Eagles for Life Kenya. We work with the Advocates for Human Rights on LGBTI rights.
Dobro večer. My name is Elena Dimushevska, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Network to End Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence from North Macedonia. We are now here in Geneva with Advocates for Human Rights, working on gender-based violence and working on improving women's rights in our countries.
Namaste. Welcome to Nepal, the Advocates for Human Rights group. I am Madhuri Singh. I have worked with the Advocates for Human Rights for the last 30 years. In fact, you were the group that taught us on human rights, on how to run shelters and how to protect the rights of women.
I'm Susanna Pavlou, Director of the Mediterranean Institute of Gender Studies in Cyprus and President of the WAVE Network. And we're collaborating with the Advocates for Human Rights on combating violence against women and girls.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Fouterel. I'm the Executive Director of the WAVE Network. WAVE stands for Women Against Violence Europe, and we are working on preventing and combating violence against women in 46 European countries with our 170 member organizations. We have been working with the Advocates for Human Rights for over 10 years on combating violence against women globally.
Namaste, I am Savitri Acharya from Kathmandu, Nepal. I'm with my friends, advocates of human rights from Minnesota.
안녕하세요. Good afternoon from Seoul, Korea. 저는 전환규정이 워킹그룹의 신희석입니다. We work with the Advocates for Human Rights on making submissions to the UN human rights bodies on the death penalty, torture, and other important issues.
Bonsoir, I'm Stephanie. I'm Seda. And we're from Mobilizing for Rights Associates. And we work with the Advocates for Human Rights since 2007 to promote women's human and legal rights in Morocco.
Enjoy the program and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for being here tonight and enjoy your evening. Vi благодарам.
Thank you and enjoy your evening.
Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Enjoy the program. Namaste. Bye.
Enjoy the program. Thank you for joining us.
Have a good night and keep on educating more children in Nepal. Thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Karen Evans, the board chair of the Advocates for Human Rights. Welcome to the Advocates annual dinner in its 41st year. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to acknowledge several people here tonight. Please hold your applause until I'm finished. It is because of the talented and hardworking people at the Advocates that is able to do the work that it does. The staff is amazing, so all current staff, please stand. Wait. Okay, go. Now, any former staff, please stand. And the Advocates has a fabulous, active board, so all current board members stand. Thank you for all you do. And now, anyone who has previously served on the board, stay standing. All of you. Okay, it is because of the many volunteers that the Advocates is able to accomplish as much as it does. All volunteers, please stand if you're volunteering now or have done something in the past. And finally, all donors stand, so everybody stand up. Thank you. I'd like to tell you a short story that showcases one reason why I'm committed to human rights work. My friend and fellow board member, Bridget Chigamwe, left her home in Zimbabwe more than 8 years ago to seek asylum in the United States. After a long journey, she arrived in the Twin Cities and came to the Advocates for help. The Advocates found her a pro bono attorney to assist with the asylum case. 6 years later, in May of 2022, Bridget was granted asylum. This past April, her two children, Paula and Edwin, whom she had not seen in 8 years, arrived in Minnesota. Bridget, Edwin, Paula, please stand. Woo. And now I'd like to take this opportunity to say a few words about the Advocates Executive Director, Robin Phillips. After attending the 1995 World Conference on Women in Beijing, Robin decided to follow her heart and leave the law firm where she had been working and join the Advocates for Human Rights as the Women's Human Rights Program Director. In 2002, Robin became the Executive Director. In her 22 years as Executive Director, Robin has worked tirelessly toward the goal of creating a world where everyone enjoys basic human rights. In the past few years, the staff of the Advocates has doubled, and along with that, the budget. This has allowed the organization to significantly increase its ability to expand its work here in Minnesota, but also around the world. Robin deserves much of the credit for leading the organization to where it is today. As many of you already know, Robin recently announced her retirement, which will happen at the end of this year. Under Robin's leadership, the Advocates is now in a very strong position to meet the ever-increasing needs for human rights services and programs. Robin has been incredibly dedicated to her work, which, as you can imagine, is, at times, very sad and enormously challenging. But Robin is always positive, forward-thinking, and calm, truly a wonderful leader of the Advocates. While she will be missed as Executive Director, Robin has agreed to work on special projects for the Advocates during the transition period. Robin, the staff, the board, the volunteers, and donors are so grateful for your 29 years with the Advocates. As one board member said recently, you are our hero. So it is with much joy and admiration that I introduce Robin Phillips.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, you're making it hard. I wasn't going to cry. Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our Human Rights Awards dinner. This evening, when our minds are crowded with the problems of the day, we'll focus on solutions. You are the solution. This room is full of the best of humanity, and I thank you for showing up for human rights tonight. Last year, we celebrated our 40th anniversary by recognizing the decades of accomplishments of our large community of human rights advocates, all of you. Now this year, we are focusing on the future, how we will use the skills and experience we have developed to take on the new challenges we face. We focus on the world we want and what we need to do to get there. We want a world where human rights standards and not political gamesmanship guide public policy. We want a world where finding safety from persecution does not depend on your ability to use an app at the border. We want a world where laborers are paid for the work they do and not exploited by fear. We want a world where everyone can get the health care they need to live full and vibrant lives. And we have the tools that we need because of all of you. You showed up this year and have given amazing amounts of time to make the world a better place. More than 1,500 of you showed up. You showed up for our asylum clients. You showed up in immigration court to let the government know that they are accountable to the people and they cannot operate in the shadows. You showed up in state court to bring a public eye to cases of trafficking and violence against women. You showed up at the United Nations to work with our partners to bring their truths to light when their country's human rights practices were being reviewed, including their use of the death penalty and their treatment of women and LGBTIQ+ individuals. You showed up as translators and interpreters. You showed up to make our office run smoothly. You showed up to dig into thorny research issues. You showed up to support our partners who are working against the backlash to human rights around the world. You showed up to make sure poor children in Nepal subjected to child labor can go to school rather than brick factories or the fields. In a room full of extraordinary human rights advocates, we are celebrating the contributions of some of our volunteers who rose to the top. We look forward to telling you more about them later in the program. We are also celebrating 2 people for their commitment to human rights. You will get to hear a few words tonight from Lee Gelernt, the 2020 recipient of our Don and Arvon Fraser Human Rights Award. He accepted the award virtually that year, so we are very happy Lee can be with us tonight in person. Lee led the successful litigation against the Trump administration's illegal attempts to restrict the rights of asylum seekers. And just a few weeks ago, Lee filed a similar suit against the recent executive order attacking the right to seek asylum. We are so grateful to Lee for your work. Thank you. We also recognize that health care is a fundamental human right. We are thrilled to present this year's Don and Arvon Fraser Human Rights Award to Sarah Stace for her lifetime commitment to reproductive health and human rights. We now live in a country where access to health care, gender-affirming care, and safe abortion services are no longer available to all those who need them. The type of health care you can get now largely depends on where you live. We appreciate Sarah's commitment, and we are inspired to build on her legacy of bravery and fortitude. The Advocates was founded on the principle that we all have a part to play in making human rights a reality. I heard that message more than 30 years ago when I was a summer associate at a law firm attending this very dinner celebration. I decided then that I would work every day to do my part. It has been the greatest privilege of my life to work for all of you and to do whatever I can to help you do your part. As I step out of my current role as executive director, I am ready to jump back in the trenches with you. I am excited to discover what other parts I have to play in making human rights a reality. I celebrate this transition with great joy because the Advocates is stronger than it has ever been. I was told early on in my career that a great leader is someone who hires people who are smarter than they are. In this, I believe I've had my greatest success. Our senior leadership team is brilliant, talented, and committed. Michelle, Jennifer, and Rose, will you please stand? Michelle Garnett McKenzie, Jennifer Prestold, and Rose Park collectively have 75 years of experience. They don't like me to say that, but they do. They are leading teams of equally brilliant, talented, and committed staff, and I am completely confident in their abilities. Many of you already know the skill, passion, and excellence they bring to everything they do, and I cannot wait to see what you do next. Thank you. I am so grateful for the amazing privilege of leading this organization. The power of the advocates has always been all of you, our amazing community. Through the ups and downs of the past decades, your support has never wavered. Together, we have always defied the odds. Through market crashes, economic downturn, even a pandemic, you have been there with us. I cannot thank you enough for that. I know whatever the future brings, together we'll rise to the challenge. So I thank you again for showing up for human rights tonight. Now please watch as we present this year's Volunteer and Pro Bono Award recipients.
Volunteers contribute to our mission in so many different ways. If you have been to our office recently, you may recognize Maureen Brown. When clients come to the Advocates, it's essential that they're greeted warmly and professionally and are assured that they've come to the right place. She is often the first point of contact our clients have when arriving at our office. She makes them feel safe and understood as they start their journey. No one understands the importance of the first step better than Maureen.
You've got to do your first part, and people have to come in and they have to start the paperwork process, which in turn starts that, which in turn starts that, and then they can get a hold of an attorney, and then the attorney can help them through the whole system.
Our clients have often had long, hazardous journeys to get to us, and Maureen always welcomes them with empathy and patience.
I really think it's important that I be, first off, empathetic. So I think you got to remember people are coming in and you don't know what they've been through and you don't know what happened, so you've got to be understanding.
Maureen has also played an important role in helping us to engage our community, whether it is from the front desk or assisting with envelope stuffing and mailings to get the word out about upcoming events. Maureen is always willing to jump in where needed. For over 40 years, the Advocates has continued to be one of the leading voices in championing human rights. During this time, not surprisingly, we've accumulated an overwhelming collection of files, many of which have not been documented digitally. These files reflect 4 decades of collaboration and advocacy on human rights issues around the world. One of our volunteers, Whitney Tuttle-Preuss, has been pivotal in tackling this massive project, and he has helped catalog a substantial amount of material that contains the history of the Advocates. Whitney's work has helped preserve and memorialize not only the Advocates' work, but also the efforts of our partners in other countries. This archive project has not been without its emotional toll, as many of the stories Whitney has cataloged document the struggle and persecution many minority and indigenous groups have faced and continue to face around the globe.
In a lot of cases, people's names and their stories being written down in those documents may be the last evidence that there is that they were there, that their stories happened, the things that were done to them happened, or the things that they did. In the case of, say, the organizations on the ground, the indigenous organizations to the country that fought for their own rights and suffered tremendously for them, or for the international organizations that fought alongside them and often suffered alongside them as well. Mm-hmm. It's disheartening at times, but it's also inspiring because I've learned an awful lot, and it gives me a whole lot of examples to work off of, to be inspired by, to remind me of that all of it is both worth doing and can lead to a good outcome at the end of it.
From our own work to the work of other organizations and defenders around the world, the Advocates Archive project shows the interconnectedness and intersectionality of human rights work everywhere. We recognize Zehra Khan for her varied contributions to the Advocates. Zehra began volunteering with the Watch Court Monitoring Project soon after it became part of the Advocates in June 2019.
I started actually volunteering during COVID, so I saw the courts as they were under transition, and from there I had an opportunity to observe courts in person, so seeing the difference between virtual court versus in person, how that affects hearings.
Without monitoring and accountability, we don't know whether our systems are failing us or if they are upholding human rights principles. And when we witness that systems here and in other parts of the world fall short, the Advocates can amplify voices for change. Zehra's contributions have helped shine a light on our local systems, while also helping make sure that the voices of our partners, on-the-ground activists, and organizers are heard. For example, Zehra helped support interviews for a report to the United Nations on migrant women in the UK.
People who are doing work on the ground, for example, in the UK, felt like their voice was actually being heard for the first time through this process. And they were excited to know that these recommendations were going to be brought to a platform that would push for change.
The Advocates works with partner organizations and with individuals who have fled their countries to provide information to the United Nations. The UN uses this information to publicly condemn bad human rights practices and make recommendations to bring laws and practices into compliance with human rights law. Our partners have successfully used those recommendations to change laws and policies, improve human rights conditions, and make people's lives better. For individuals who have fled persecution and systemic human rights violations, collaborating with the Advocates represents the possibility of continuing to transform systems in their country of origin and giving voice to the issues when those in their country have been silenced. This year, volunteer Reina Blandon Lagos has helped with these efforts by contributing to a report submitted to the United Nations addressing the Nicaraguan government's actions to restrict civic space and its actions to surveil, control, and repress the freedom of opinion and expression. As we work in the U.S. for federal immigration policy grounded in respect for human rights, Reina has provided crucial testimony highlighting the importance of asylum and helping us put a face to the claim that the right to asylum saves lives and families every day.
Pues los proyectos se han hecho con el fin de que esto llegue al Congreso, llegue a las personas correctas, a las personas que tienen que ver con el asilo, la necesidad que está ahí latente todos los días, viendo que están en peligro, personas que no pueden trabajar, personas que no se sienten seguras en este país, viendo que salieron de su país porque estaban en peligro y vienen a este país y siguen teniendo miedo, siguen bajo la sombra.
Reina reminds us of the importance of client-centered perspectives in our work, and that our work comes from a place of dignity and empowerment.
Porque lo hacemos de una manera muy segura, de una manera muy con todo el amor del mundo, con todo nuestro corazón en el momento que estamos haciendo el trabajo. Y es muy bonito, se siente muy bonito saber que uno está haciendo algo bueno.
Volunteers like Reina help keep the Advocates focused on our mission of grounding policy work in real-life experiences, bridging the gap between advocacy and action, and of engaging everyone in the human rights movement.
Lo que haría, yo insto y invito a las personas que quieran convertirse en una persona voluntaria que lo hagan, porque es bonito sentirse que uno está haciendo algo bueno por alguien,
The Advocates believes in and fights for immigration systems guided by international human rights standards and dedicated to the fair and humane treatment of all. Goodwin Procter LLP, this year's recipient of our law firm Pro Bono Award, has overwhelmed us with their contributions to our work. More than 300 volunteers around the world and from different practice areas contributed thousands of hours to prepare more than 120 country condition packets on 48 countries that can be used by pro se asylum seekers and volunteer attorneys. These packets provide resources to respond to increased needs from asylum seekers and new arrivals, and allow them to put their best foot forward when it comes to representing themselves in immigration court.
Well, I think the driving force of working on something like this is knowing that an individual will have this in hand when they're facing a very strict and rigorous court to help them change their lives. So it's a huge impact, even if you impact one individual.
Goodwin shows that regardless of where you're located, we can all make an impact when it comes to protecting human rights.
Even though I'm not directly interacting with clients in this particular project, it just helps create the motivation and the sort of the backdrop and the context of what you're doing. So you know individuals who have needed help before, so you can relate that to whatever you're doing, really.
Bill Hitler has been a longtime participant in the Advocates' work to protect and uphold the rights of migrants and refugees. For years, Bill has represented a variety of pro bono clients, including unaccompanied children and people in immigration court.
I began working with teams of people at our firm on asylum cases on behalf of children who had come to the United States. Over time, because there were other cases needing help, I volunteered on adult cases, at least one involving an individual who was detained. I contribute effort or time or research with others in our firm and in other firms who are looking for advice on a particular way to make a point or how to make the strongest case possible to the judge.
These efforts pay off in safety. Just this past March, Bill celebrated an asylum grant for a client from Honduras.
Our client had an asylum win, yes. We represented a transgender woman from Honduras. And she had been here for 5 years and had her individual hearing in front of the immigration court and presented her case along with an expert and others who supported her at the hearing itself. And the judge determined that she had met the criteria for asylum.
Bill's tireless work also allows the Advocates to support other pro bono attorneys as they represent their clients and to fight for a more just immigration system overall. And everyone can contribute to these efforts.
If I had the choice, what I would do is I would take this award and I would give a copy to everybody, because what I'm able to do, what I'm able to contribute, is really just part of a bigger collection of wonderful people, all of whom are just dedicated to really this wonderful mission.
Thank you. Please join me in congratulating our winners, these people who do so much work to make the world better. Please hold your applause to the end, but I'd like to introduce the law firm Pro Bono Award winner, Goodwin Procter. Okay. Volunteer Whitney Tuttle-Preuss. Volunteer Sarah Khan. Volunteer Reina Blandón Lagos. And pro bono lawyer Bill Hitler. Again, thank you.
So this is the first year that I haven't been running around with a clipboard making people move, and I forgot to move when I was supposed to, and got trapped behind a monitor. So one more round of applause for our volunteers. Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm Michelle Garnett McKenzie. I'm a Deputy Director here at the Advocates for Human Rights. And I'm so honored to introduce Lee Gelernt, a fellow Deputy Director, although at a much different scale. Lee was our 2020 Donna and Arvon Fraser Human Rights Award winner. We're all experiencing a bit of deja vu this year, unfortunately. And so it is the perfect moment to celebrate Lee Gelernt. Lee is the Deputy Director of the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project, and it's so good to see you here in person, not on Zoom from your apartment in New York. I don't know if we have a photo of him from a few years ago being presented his award. There's your son. It was a glorious celebration that we held for you in 2020. We recognized Lee then when he was in the midst of challenging a litany of horrors that made up the Trump agenda, the anti-immigrant rhetoric, the anti-immigrant policies just never seemed to stop. At that point, I think you had argued some of the highest profile cases in the country. A nationwide challenge to separating families at the border, which is still underway, trying to get those families together. 2 asylum bans by then, I think. And the first case challenging the Trump travel ban that resulted in a federal court in Brooklyn issuing a nationwide injunction on a Saturday night, a day after the ban was enacted. Now, 4 years later, unfortunately, Lee is continuing to have to fight. And just a few weeks ago, as Robin said, he was part of the team challenging yet another attempt to eviscerate the right to seek asylum in the United States. Through the power of the courts, Lee demands accountability when people's basic human rights are dismissed because of their immigration status. He serves as a beacon for those whose rights are violated, and as a torchbearer for those of us who walk with the people seeking safety. We get to see those people every day who would not make it in this country but for your efforts. Thank you. You have the courage to stand up, as you're doing now, to our government and to remind them that we have a duty to protect fundamental human rights every day. Please join me in welcoming Lee to the stage. As is my customary talking to other people, I will remove the box.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Robin, so much, and the advocates. It's always flattering to receive recognition, but it's a particular honor to receive it from your peers, and particularly from a group like the Advocates that's in the trenches doing the real work. And so, I'm flattered and honored to receive this recognition, and so happy that Robin invited me to actually come in person and be with you all. Robin asked me just to say a couple of minutes of what can everyone do going forward, because we are obviously in a tough place for immigrants, not just from the right, but also a lot of Democrats, I think, have sort of thrown in the towel. I wish I had a silver bullet. I think my only advice, having been doing this for 3 decades, is we just need to keep fighting, and that means doing everything possible we will get through this, and it means everyone, not just lawyers. I think the video that you played was really important to show how many different ways that people can help, and it's not obviously just lawyers or professional advocates. there's so many ways to help, and it can, it can be everything from translating, it can be literally just being nice to vulnerable immigrants. There's a myriad ways to help and to volunteer, and even just to be talking to people and trying to educate them about various issues. To keep your head up, but I do want to just in this last minute say something to the young people here. I think there's a lot of young people, a lot of young lawyers, maybe, and a lot of young advocates. I guess two things. One is that sometimes the problems seem so big and you just feel like, well, what can I do? I'm one person. But as someone said in the video, just take one little thing, help one person. It really makes a difference. It'll be gratifying to you, and it will really make a difference. And so don't think about, well, how could I solve this big problem? Do one little thing. It could just be even tutoring a young kid, or it can be anything, really. The other thing I wanted to say is, and this is, I think, maybe for the young lawyers, but I think for everyone sort of in the quote-unquote establishment, about not to dismiss the power you hold and to what your help means in the eyes of vulnerable people. This is going back 30 years to when I first started at the National ACLU, but I still think about it all the time. My first case, I was sent down to Texas on a case where the federal government was giving people forms only in English and very complicated, and 98% of the people, based on the statistics we were able to get, showed that people were waving away their rights without any understanding. And so I went down, and my liaison down there was someone who was a non-lawyer, but who worked in a grassroots group, and we were both, in our mid-20s. She was the exact same age, and we met with a 19-year-old woman from El Salvador who had waved away all her rights. And my Spanish was fairly weak at the time, and so this young grassroots advocate was translating, and she started by saying to the woman, Lee is here from New York, and he's muy importante abogado. And I, afterward, in a very glib, silly way, said to the human rights organizer, after we were not in the presence of the client, you should have said, oh, I'm a muy importante lawyer. And then I went home back to New York, and I thought about it a few weeks later, and I realized how much wiser that young woman, that organizer, was than I was at the time, because she understood that woman from El Salvador needed to hear that someone was on her side, someone from the establishment, a lawyer was on her side, and how critical that was. And so she wasn't trying to build me up by saying I was important, but she was very pointedly telling this woman, there are people on your side. And so I think for all you young people, who are sort of quote-unquote in the establishment, including obviously young lawyers, never forget how much it means to people to be on their side and what kind of power you have, and that you have a very different relationship with our government than these vulnerable people do, and that you can really make a difference. So thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. This is really flattering.
Thank you so much. We all do have something we can bring, and we need to bring it every day. And one woman here has brought her skills and her talents for 15 years.
Long time.
For a long time.
We looked much better.
We did not.
You were a kid.
We look beautiful today, Pat. What are you talking about? But during that 15 years, I think, we, a conservative estimate says you've helped us raise about $750,000, maybe? Maybe more than that?
Millions. I say
millions. All right. So please welcome Pat Brenna for her. This is your final performance.
This is it. Thank you, darling. All right, everybody, hello again. I can say this for like the 14th time and really mean it. It is my extreme pleasure and honor to be here. And to celebrate the advocates. And I was going to say, let's give a round of applause again to the volunteers. But I want to say, let's give a round of applause again to Lee. Whoa. Well, for those of you who have not been here before, my job is to persuade or cajole and even times embarrass and force you to give money to the advocates. Last year we raised over $400,000, and this year I'm not putting a number on it. I'm just saying over $400,000. And to encourage you, and Robin said no, but I say yes. What's she going to do, fire me? And to encourage you, I say let's give it up for Robin tonight and do. There we go. All right. So, however, we have already reached almost half of that for sponsors and donors who are not able to be here tonight, and we certainly appreciate and we are very grateful for their donations. So how are we going to do that? What did Lee just say, one little thing? I say bit by bit. I used to say, ladies and gentlemen, get out your checkbooks, your credit cards, and any other legal tender. However, I'm not sure that half of the room would know what I was talking about. So, this is how long it's been. So, we all have these programs. They all have the QR code. You text, you hit this little button, you give us some money when I tell you what you're giving us money for. And if you are a traditionalist, there are still forms and envelopes on the table, and you can write out a real live, honest-to-God check and put it in there. And our volunteers, our intern volunteers are there to help you. As you sort of move through that. I myself, I will say I am a boomer, and I had to have sort of a little pal with me when I was trying to bid during the silent auction, who just followed me around and told me which buttons to hit. You know, we're getting there. All right, so $400 plus $1,000. Give it up for Robin, and we're going to start. We are going to start making some money bit by bit. Remember, text the back of your program and or just, open up your pockets and pour it out. I'm okay with that, too. Is there going to be a video before I start? Or am I going right into $10,000? Okay, so here's the deal.
We attend the Human Rights Awards dinner to celebrate human rights, to be part of the solution, to change the world for good.
We form networks with human rights defenders around the globe. Together, we stand up to governments that deny human rights to women and members of the LGBTQI+ community.
Together, we fight to repeal laws that allow human rights violations to occur.
Together, we advocate to implement laws, policies, and practices that uphold human rights principles.
You saw the video of our partners at the beginning of our program. They are counting on us. Your gift of $10,000 strengthens our joint efforts to tackle the most pressing human rights issues.
All right, everybody, let's raise some money. Want to have some fun? You want to raise some money? Who's going to start the fun with $10,000? I'm wondering if we have anybody in the room who's about to donate $10,000 to a very, very worthy cause. I can't see somebody show me. Is there someone? Thank you. Thank you so very, very much. There's our first 10 grand. Now we only have 500,000 more to go. So anybody else want to give us 10,000? I'm going to go 10,000 and just plant the seeds for the advocates so they can grow and grow and grow. Now I know that some of you are shy and would like to remain anonymous, and that's great. And I know many of you gave us $10,000 last year, and if you could be so kind to do it again by very quietly filling out a form and handing it to your interns, we will accept that. And thank you very much in advance for your anonymous donation.
And the same strength and persistence are needed here at home. The propaganda, rollback of legal protections, and threats to human rights defenders that we see in other parts of the world directly affect us all. The increase in people seeking asylum that we see here in our home in Minnesota is directly related to the human rights conditions in other countries. Right now, we receive 1,000 calls per month from asylum seekers asking for help. You heard that correctly. 1,000 calls per month. I am asking you to help provide legal representation for victims of human rights abuses here in our home in the Upper Midwest. We need your financial support to address this need. Your gift of $5,000 helps people find safety, become part of our community, and build our future together.
Wow. It used to be 1,000 calls a year. Now it is 1,000 calls a month. Imagine the resources it takes to be able to accommodate that and help as many people as we can help in a given year. So I'm asking you now to donate $5,000 so that we can continue to provide help for 3,000 asylum seekers and more every single year, because there's going to be more. So this is how we do this. We raise our hand. We say, Pat, I'd like to give you $5,000. So how many people in the room? There's one over there. This is how this happens. I've got one. I've got two. Who's going to have 5? I'm looking for $5,000. Think about it. I've got 3. If you think about it, we do 3,000 right now, 3,000 asylum cases a year. Thank you so very much. We've got another 5,000 over here. Ladies and gentlemen, we keep applauding. We keep doing this. And we got another $5,000. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Wow, that's amazing. Can you imagine? 3,000 people got help. That 3,000 people's lives changed. That's 3,000 people's families changed. And we thank you very, very much.
Accountability is the cornerstone of human rights. The Advocates has held governments accountable for human rights violations for many years. Our work includes partnerships with advocates worldwide, such as Mila, who led a women's rights organization in Belarus. Mila had to flee her country, but even under dire circumstances, she continued her work. She contributed firsthand information about women's rights to a report that we submitted to the United Nations. She made sure that the world got to know what is happening to women and human rights activists in Belarus. Your gift of $2,500 enables partners to advocate with us at the United Nations in Geneva.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's enable more Milas. Think about the Milas of the world who are fighting for human rights in their own countries, and then going to the UN and speaking truth to power and getting the UN to change its policies and its systems. So for all of the Milas in the world who are out there trying to change their little corner of the world, who's going to give me $2,500? 25 is going to go 25. Raise those hands. Let's go 25. I've got 1. I've got 2. Thank you. And thank you. And thank you. Oh, look at you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. 25. Another 25. Another 25. Oh, thank you so much over here. All the Milas of the world are thanking you for your $2,500. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Imagine that. How many corners of the world might those $2,500 donations change?
I admire how the Advocates mobilizes volunteers, meets ever-increasing community needs, and pivots to respond quickly to crises. Last year, more than 1,500 interns, court observers, interpreters, translators, pro bono lawyers, and other professionals made our work possible by engaging in meaningful and critical human rights activities with us. Earlier tonight, we saw the award-winning contributions by some of our volunteers. Our volunteers are supported through ongoing training and mentorship. Your gift of $1,000 helps us mobilize those volunteers and respond rapidly to emerging needs.
Thank you. So those of us who have been around for a while have seen the need for the volunteers of Advocates for Human Rights to rapidly respond and to show up when the world changes and we don't know what's going to happen, do we? So I suggest that as many of you as who can, please donate $1,000 so that we can make sure that all of the advocates are able to quickly respond to changes in the world and in this country. It's Robin's favorite. I'm going to say this. I'm saying this is Robin's favorite, 1,000. Everyone is Robin's favorite. And I'm wondering if we can't get maybe 20 people tonight to give us $1,000. How about that? I've got one. I've got two. I've got 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you so much. 7, 8, $1,000. 9, thank you, Jim. 10, 11, 12. 12 in the very, very, very back of the room. 13, 14, 15. Let's go 5 more, 5 more, 5. 16, 17. This is Robin's favorite. Did I mention this is Robin's favorite? 18, 19. Let's do that last $1,000 is going to go. I've got another one. Bravo, ladies and gentlemen. Bravo. This is the way it works. Thank you so much.
With 1,000 calls a month, the Advocates has developed innovative models to deliver services in order to help more people. Self-help clinics throughout Minnesota that bring together local partners, translators, interpreters, people seeking help, and the Advocates are a very effective way to help people complete their own asylum applications. Your donation of $500 helps organize and conduct one pro se clinic.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, how many clinics can we hold next year for $500 for people outstate who find it difficult to have transportation or housing or food or money to be here when they're processing that? And so we're going to process them outstate. How many $500 outstate sessions can we do? Who's going to be the first to raise there? Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 5? Is it going to go 5? I've got 5. I've got 5 over there. I'm looking for 5. I've got 1 more 2. I'm looking for 5. Is it going to go 5? Is it going to go 5? Is it going to go 5? I'm looking for 500. How many outstate service centers can we provide? I've got another 5. I'm looking for more 5. I'm looking for 5. Who's got more 5s? I'm looking for 5. I've got another 5. Okay, everybody needs to clap and applaud this and celebrate this and encourage, especially encourage those people who don't know what $500 looks like because it's all in their Apple Pay, to get out their Apple Pay and give us $500. How about that? Bravo. There's another one over there. 500, another 500, and another 500. Thank you so very much. Think about all of the outstate sessions we're going to be able to hold for that.
2024 is the 25th anniversary of our Sanku Palubari Community School in Nepal. Throughout this time, hundreds of children have enjoyed attending school, learning English, math, and science, participating in extracurricular activities, and creating a promising future for themselves and their families. Last year, a group of staff and volunteers visited the school and interviewed students, parents, and teachers. They were impressed by the progress of the school as well as the support of the community. Right now, 375 students, more than 50% of them girls, are enrolled in classes ranging from pre-kindergarten to 10th grade. Your gift of just $300 pays for one student's tuition, meals, health checks, and much, much more.
Okay, girlfriends, give it up. 50% of the students are girls, soon to be women. $300, 375 kids. Here's what $300 means to you. 1 latte a week. Not only does it pay for the tuition, it pays for food, it pays for board, it pays for healthcare, and it also pays for some of the families that surround these children. So I'm wondering how many student scholarships at $300, and I'm saying go girls because This is a gal thing. Let's get in. $300. I got 3 over here. I've got 3. Who's going to go 3? I've got 3. I've got 3. I've got 1. Thank you. I've got 2. Thank you, honey. I'm looking for 3. 4. Thank you. Come on, women. Let's go. I've got 5. I've got 6. How many students are going to get funded? I've got 7 in the back. I've got 8. I've got 9. 50%. 50% of these students are young women. I've got another one. How many more tuitions are we going to pay for? One more. Can we get 5 more tuitions at $300? I've got 1. I've got 2. Who's going to give me the last one? I have 3, 4, 5. I've got 3. I've got 4. I've got 5 tuitions. I'll take it. And remember, if you're too shy to raise your hand, then you just go and take your phone, you take a picture of the QR code, and then you press the button that says, this is how much money I intend to give you. But you also have to tell us what your credit card number is. So, okay.
There's so much more that your gift of any size can do.
Holding the justice system accountable by bringing the public into the courtroom.
Working with community partners to identify human trafficking, and strengthening the human rights movement, to name just a few examples.
I could speak for hours about the impact that we can create together, so please join me in giving generously tonight. Thank you.
Okay. This is your last chance to give publicly, and I'm looking for $100. I'm looking for 20 people in the room to give me $100. How about that? All you have to do is raise your hand and then text it or do the QR code or hand your lovely volunteers a check for $100. Let's go. Who's going to go first? I'm going to 1. I'm looking for 1. Who's going to go 1? I've got 1 in the back. I've got 2 in the back. I've got 3. I've got 4. Come on, up we go. I got 5. $100. I've got 6. Thank you so very much. Applaud this until we get to 20. I've got 7, 8, 9. Thank you so very much. 10, 11, 12. Up we go. 13, 14, 15. 5 more, 500. I'm looking for 5. 16, 17, 18, 19. Who's going to be the 20th? Come on, who's going to be? I've got the 20th. I've got 20 people giving us $100. You know, Lee said, it just takes one little thing, right? One little thing, and you all did one little thing, and we're so very, very grateful. Aren't we, Robin?
We are, and they turn on you so quickly, so enjoy it now.
We are so very, very grateful.
And thank you, Pat. As she said, this is her last year, and we are her only pro bono client, or one of her only, but her most consistent, and we thank her for years and years of volunteer work. I think he's standing on a box.
You're not that tall.
Thank you. And now I'm honored to present this year's Don and Arvon Fraser Human Rights Award to Sarah Stays. And before we do that, we're going to see a video that Tom Fraser will tell us about the Don and Arvon Fraser Award.
It is my view that the human rights idea has to become the central organizing principle for the planet, that the world community can only survive and work together with that as the centerpiece.
Good evening. I'm Tom Fraser, and I was one of the co-founders of the Advocates back in 1983, along with my father. My parents, Don and Arvon Fraser, ignited the Advocates for Human Rights from the very beginning. Arvon inspired women's human rights activists across the globe, encouraging generations of women to find their voices, make their lives better, and improve the world. She was fearless, bold, and blunt, and did not bend to those who tolerated violence against women as part of their culture. Don, on the other hand, was a quiet but determined champion for human rights. From fair housing to early childhood education, human rights issues defined his career in public office. While in Congress, Don held hearings on human rights violations by U.S. allies and drafted legislation requiring annual State Department reports on human rights conditions in countries receiving U.S. aid. As one of the Advocates founders, Don's vision was to leverage volunteer resources to promote and protect human rights in Minnesota and around the world. In their honor, the Advocates presents the Don and Arvon Fraser Human Rights Award to individuals or organizations who exemplify the principles Don and Arvon stood for throughout their more than 90 years: steadfast commitment, hard work, and an unfailing belief that human rights should be a bedrock principle for all people.
So as many of us know, Sarah Stays embodies the great qualities of both Don and Arvon, and like Arvon, her legacy includes making the world a better and safer place for women. Don and Arvon believed that we all have a part to play in improving human rights. As Arvon always said, the world is run by those who show up. Tonight, we recognize and celebrate all the ways that Sarah has shown up for human rights and reproductive health. Sarah is a healthcare executive and advocate who is deeply committed to protecting access to healthcare, reproductive health services, and access to safe abortion. For more than 20 years, Sarah was president and CEO of Planned Parenthood North Central States. Under her leadership, Planned Parenthood grew from 2 states to 5 states with 28 clinics and digital health services. Sarah's first professional experience was as a labor organizer, and then she worked on economic justice issues for both Governor Rudy Perpich and Senator Paul Wellstone. Sarah's resume is impressive, but it does not give the whole picture. Sarah is a powerful advocate and does not accept the status quo. She has led legislative efforts and litigation strategies to protect access to safe reproductive health care. She also uses creativity and common sense. For example, when Planned Parenthood could not get access to low-cost contraceptives, Sarah created a public benefit corporation to produce generic birth control drugs. Problem solved. Sarah has shown up for reproductive rights when it was not popular, when it was dangerous, even life-threatening. As CEO of Planned Parenthood, Sarah's top priority was keeping patients, staff, and volunteers safe. Sarah and her team faced down death threats, bomb threats, fake anthrax scares, and countless other threatening situations during her tenure. In fact, the new facility they built required substantial fortification and a safe room. Sarah took on attempts to restrict access to reproductive health services and was instrumental in defeating several ballot measures. As we collectively focus on advocacy after the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, we are inspired by your example, Sarah. We recognize Sarah for her courage, her passion, and her lifelong commitment to human rights through her work and engagement in the democratic process. Please join me in recognizing our 2024 Don and Arvon Fraser Human Rights Award recipient, Sarah Stays.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Robin, and all of you for this very deeply meaningful honor. Don and Arvon Fraser, what incredible moral models for all of us. They were such serious people and so persistent. They were in it for the long haul. Every single year they showed up. They showed us how to do it. They were not one and doneers at all, not by any means. And I just really have to express my deep gratitude for their lives, and also to the advocates. Thank you very, very much. And of course, as we recognize Arvon and Don, I also want to join all of you in recognizing another moral leader who shows up, and that's Robin Phillips. Right. Robin, from Minneapolis to Moldova to Ethiopia and beyond, Robin has stood up and addressed the basis of real human suffering with her sharp brain, her legal chops, but also her extraordinary humanitarian heart that is just so unimaginably big. She is a hero. And her heroes, truly, are the women and the men who have to do so much in their own personal lives to overcome injustice. And so she reflects her compassionate strength to them. They reflect it back to her, and so on, and so on, and so on. And that's the way she changes the world. And she has she's led the advocates from a feisty group of lawyers, still a pretty feisty group of lawyers, I think, with a big vision, and now the Advocates is a respected leader in global human rights. So Robin, thank you for so many years. You have lifted our sights. You definitely represent the very best of all of us, and we are deeply and forever grateful to you, Robin. Thank you. And the advocates, all of you represent the best of all of us, too. A lot of people opine about human rights. It's popular, it's easy to do, and it can make you feel good when you do it. But the advocates know that human rights are only what we make of them, only what and how much we are willing to sacrifice for and to struggle for. So our words are important, and of course, they inspire, they can galvanize, but it's really what we do with our lives that matter. And the advocates demonstrate this. You are the hands-on workers for human rights. You show all of us, the world, that human rights don't exist as a force of nature, but only exist because of the actions that we take, even at risk to our lives sometimes and to our families. And here, I want to recognize my own brave family, especially my daughter, Andrea Stace. She was just a girl when we first had our security team come and create our family's home safety plan. And she didn't choose the life that we lived, but she always shared the vision. And because of her shared vision and her bravery, she was very brave, and it made it possible for my husband, David Foster, and for me to continue with our work. So thank you, Andrea. But now, of course, the grave truth is that the result of all of our collective work is at risk. And we're on the precipice, as we know, of a very, very dangerous cliff, and one that very much, most definitely, threatens global human rights, as well as global democracy, and so many gains that we've made. The severity and the ferocity of the attack and the backlash feels like we are living in this endless, regenerating tornado, but it's not a drill. that we're experiencing right now, it's not a movie, it's the real thing. And we all know what we're talking about. There are serious, even lethal divisions playing out not in just one, but in various ways across our communities, here, across our nation, across our entire globe, sometimes also in our families, even among close allies and partners sometimes. Feelings are so deeply held and so passionately expressed, and we sometimes can find ourselves alienated from the very people with whom we've found common ground. And it is so hard and so painful some days, and yet there is still hope. There is always hope, because human rights matter so much, and we can use these boiling circumstances to press us into finding allies wherever we can and holding them as close as we possibly can, and into valuing and treasuring our friends even if we sometimes think that their ideas or their tactics are flawed, and maybe especially if we think them flawed. We have lived through, and we continue to live through, divisions in our country, and we have to take them seriously. And we can and we must press forward to overcome them. In 2021, after 20 years of working in the labor movement and other progressive movements, I came to help lead the reproductive justice struggle, which seemed like such a natural extension of my previous work, but I was immediately struck by how isolated I found myself within my group of longtime allies. Labor rights are human rights, certainly, but labor and other human rights can only take a woman so far if she's prohibited from deciding when and if to have children, or if she can't get reproductive health care, or if laws or doctors' beliefs stop them from saving her life. They don't mean much if pregnancy and childbirth, or even sometimes death, now we all know, are compulsory. But we were in a different era in 2001. Abortion was a word, you remember, not said in polite company, even among allies. And some friends in movements and some friends even inside healthcare suddenly were uncomfortable with me at their tables, and I sure felt it, and we all knew it. But that is no longer the case, and that's in part due to the Dobbs decision, of course, shocked the world out of complacency. But we can't depend on pivotal moments like that to make change. Just like Arvon and Don and Robin, we just have to do the work. My years of living in an environment that was highly charged, very highly charged, highly charged physically and psychologically, taught me that we have to create dialogue rather than inviting confrontation, and we have to speak a language of inclusion and to embrace rather than to denounce our imperfect allies. And I'm thinking, for example, of Governor Rudy Perpich, who was deeply Catholic, and he was pro-life. And he had plenty of imperfections, but he also had a very strong core. And he worked with people in this room, you remember, to create the Center for Victims of Torture, which at the time was part of the Advocates. And he appointed pro-choice and pro-life judges and commissioners with whom we were able to find common ground. So we made friends and we made progress. And I think of the people of South Dakota, especially right now, because it's kind of culturally fashionable and easy pickings in some ways for people to malign that state, but that's not right. It's never right, and it's never helpful. And I just remember that in 2006, nearly 2 decades before abortion rights ballot initiatives became common, South Dakota people bravely came together, pro-choice people and pro-life people to defeat an abortion ban by popular election in that deeply conservative state. And we did this despite being shunned at times by national leaders and friends who thought that our strategy and inclusive messaging didn't meet their expectations. But that groundbreaking victory was possible because we specifically embraced and respected South Dakota allies from all across the spectrum. This approach was intuitively understood and practiced by my friend Connie Lewis. And we have her to thank for articulating this ethical framework. There was no potential ally who was cast out, not one single one. It was controversial for us not to insist on purity, but we focused on what we were trying to achieve, which was legal protection for abortion access so that we could continue to keep our clinic, the only provider of abortion care, open. And so Dr. Carol Ball, sitting right here, could risk her life and travel to Sioux Falls to care for people that the local medical community turned its back on for decades. And we won not once, but twice in South Dakota, twice in North Dakota, and this was more than a decade before anyone else in the country was doing this. And as a result, tens of thousands of people's human rights were protected. And there were many more examples of careful words and allyship and partnership. Mike Drysdale is here tonight after 20 years, the longest serving pro bono attorney Planned Parenthood ever had. And Mike created a careful and non-confrontational reproductive rights as human rights strategy as we challenged some deeply offensive laws. Last year, I served for a time as interim CEO for Planned Parenthood in Utah. And one day I learned that some of our doctors, who also practiced at a local hospital, had prepared to meet a woman who was being airlifted from Wyoming with an ectopic pregnancy and who had been denied critical health care because of the laws and the beliefs in that state. But by the time she arrived in Salt Lake City, she had died. She was 16 years old, and she died because she was explicitly denied the health care and the human right to live. You haven't read about her because her devastated family didn't even know she was pregnant and is still unable to speak publicly. So our job on behalf of that family is to turn toward our natural partners, even if we think they're flawed, and also toward some who are not our natural partners, but with whom we share some values, and to move together past today's darkness. And that's one thing I know for sure that the Advocates believes and does and will ensure happens. Because as the only human rights organization in our whole country with a core principle, this is so important, of pulling in volunteers in all aspects of work, the core business of the Advocates is that sense of partnership. And when you, paid staff and volunteers, show up for asylum seekers, when you reach across national boundaries to make friends by showing up and working together to establish and protect human rights, when you partner to incorporate the experiences of the diaspora into Liberia's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, when you do all these things and so many more, you demonstrate that darkness is not inevitable, and that however dreary these days can seem, sun will not set on human rights, and sun will not set on democracy. And I just want to close with a short story about something I experienced 2 weeks ago, and that occurred immediately after I had my annual physical exam and was sitting on a table in a somewhat vulnerable state wearing one of those awful gowns. You know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. The doctor left the room, but the medical assistant stopped at the door. And she turned back, and she looked at me, and she came to me, and she stepped into my arms, bursting into tears, thanking me for my part in saving her life because she was able to have an abortion 4 years ago. And she told me her whole story while just sobbing with such profound gratitude the whole time. And she is now figuring out how to get herself into medical school so she can help other women. And in much that way, the advocates, all of you, save lives and you fight for change. Her individual life was saved. She will go on, as you do, to fight for others. What you are all doing is so crucially important. I deeply admire you and am eternally grateful to you for your endless hard work and for honoring me and my family with this incredible award, which I accept on behalf of that extraordinary medical assistant and so many others who are right now dedicating their lives to human rights. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
My name is Bridget Shivimbiso Chigunwe. Congratulations to all the award winners tonight. You are integral to the strength of the human rights movement here in Minnesota and beyond. Board Chair Karen Evans told you a little bit about me and my children earlier tonight. And you may remember me from the 2022 Human Rights Awards dinner. I had just been granted asylum. So much has changed since then. I'm so happy that I am reunited with my children, Paula and Edwin. Thank you for being here for me, my children, and the thousands of asylum seekers you heard about tonight. It takes all of us to protect human rights, to protect the dignity of every person. Thank you for celebrating with us tonight. Please take a button to show everyone that you will vote for human rights in the fall, and remember to pick up your silent auction winnings as you leave. You should have received a text earlier notifying you if you won any items. This evening would not have been possible without our sponsors, table hosts, members of the planning committee, board members, volunteers, auction contributors, partners, interns, and staff. Thank you all. Dessert is served just outside these doors. Please take advantage of the lovely evening to have a treat and connect with members of our amazing advocates family. Good night and drive safe.